Next we have Stefano Gorini. Stefano is the storage group lead at CSCS. That's the Swiss National Supercomputing Center. He works in the HPC operation unit, manages a team of 6 people, focused on the operation of 2 main Cray, Synexion, Lustre file systems, and all the other related storage aspects of CSCS operations related to storage, such as backup and IBM SpectrumScale. Ladies and gentlemen, please, let's have a round of applause for Stefano.
Hi everyone, so he already introduced me, and if you want to know more about CSCS, you will have an overview now. So it will be a little bit different talk. We are really users and not developers, so you will see what a user see or what a user asks to a developer or vendors when he wants to use Lustre. And I will give you an idea of the main issue we have right now and what we want to do in the next future using Lustre. Then if you have questions on other aspects of our storage, then ask, but I will not present in this one. So this is the main standard picture of the service we provide at CSCS. So we are a national supercomputing center, so we provide HPC mainly to our users. As you see, we have a huge Cray. Starting this year, we have also 2 Lustre file systems attached to it, and then I will tell you why. And both of them are Synexion. One is the 1600, so a little bit old, but still good. And the last one we added this year is the 3000, and it's still the same family. All the other machines you see here are example of other little machine we have compared to the big one that is Bitstein. And each of them has a Lustre, has scratch file system, so each of them has a kind of black box Lustre. We don't really deploy the Lustre, we manage the Lustre. So one is an NEC Lustre, and they deploy for us any update, but we debug for them any problem we have. And the same goes for the Cray CLFS Lustre that is on a Meteo machine, so the machine that does the Meteo forecast for Switzerland. All the other storage goes to a GPFS. It's the cloud you see. It's a GPFS cloud that's moved the data from scratch to an online file system and then to tapes. So for us, Lustre is mainly a kind not volatile file system, but we don't want users to leave any files on Lustre. It's real scratch. And then I will show you how we are trying to force our users to do that. So this is just going through quickly the Lustre file system we have. So until last year, we had Bitstein, our Cray machine with just Synexion 1600. And this was a problem for the high availability of the machine, because with the Cray Synexion that is at the end, the cluster Seagate, just rebranded, we had problem updating it and upgrading it. So every time we were touching the machine, we were losing like 2-3 days doing the upgrade. And we were not really inclined to do this for the next version of the machine, the upgraded machine we had this year, because each hour we stay down as a price for the node hours we have, so we want to save that money. And we pushed our director to buy a second Synexion. So now we have 2 Synexion mainly for redundancy and high availability between the 2. So if you have any issue, we will shut down one Synexion and run on the other one. And the same for the maintenance. As you see, they are a little bit different. One is more oriented for the high performance and is doing like around 140 gigabytes per second. This is the 1600, so less space but more performance oriented. And due to the number of OSS you can see and SSU, so each SSU performs few gigabytes. So more you add, more you have in performance. And the 3000 is more dense, so you have a sensitive less number of OSS, but more capacity disk, so we have more space. And all this is attached to a machine of roughly 6,000 client nodes, plus some nodes outside that we use for other purposes, and I will show you afterwards. Each system at CSCS has always a TDS, and the same for Synexion. So we have TDS for each connection we have at the center. We are missing for now the 3000 because we couldn't afford to buy a 3000 for TDS, but we are working on it. But anyway, the 1600 and 2000 are there for TDS, and we can try to apply any upgrade. But unfortunately for connection, whatever you try, when you go at scale, it behaves differently. It's probably the same with any other Lustre, but so you can try the basics and see, okay, it works, it goes on. But then when you go on and scale, then you face other issues, mainly network issue typically, but you face that. So the other CLFS Lustre we have are pretty small, but this is due because the machine is really small and is not used for performance. They have to do meteo forecast, and all the computation they do, it's mainly CPU related, not really I/O bandwidth related, and that's more than enough. The only problem we have here that CLFS is phasing out for Cray, so they are not going to support this anymore for the next time. So we are looking for a solution how to replace it. But this machine has a problem because we need to stack in a rack because we want to have this machine isolated because it's a mission critical for our country. We have to do forecast. So whatever we will choose to replace should fit in the U where now CLFS is, so it's not easy. And that's the main issue. The other Lustre file system we have is the one on a cluster that are meant for few professors. It's called Monk. And this one, it's an NEC, it's a standard Lustre on NetApp box. Nothing special, it's from the community, but it's installed with the NEC way of installing machine with their own system. This is not giving particular issue, it's really a standard one. So the problem I was talking before, we introduced this service this year because we are trying to force our users to not leave too many files after they run on the main machine. And we don't want to use the Lustre quota because this has a huge impact on the performance, meaning not counting the files but enforcing it. So we are trying to work around this problem. And what we have done so far, it's first thing, we are giving a user a way to design a workflow where they can, in the same batch script, move data in Lustre, do their calculation, and move out the data from Lustre. So we added 4 more nodes called data movers. They are in the same Slurm cluster. So our user can define a job for these nodes, telling them, okay, move my file from my project account that is on GPFS to Lustre, do the computation, and then move out from Lustre. And they can use any tool. I'm just listing a few of them, including GridFTP. We don't care if they want to move data out of CSCS. They can do that. 2 nodes are open to the outside. And they like this thing. They do really often. And the other thing we did, every time they submit a job, we check on a DB where we basically put all the quota data that Lustre provides to us in a DB. We check the DB. If a user has more than 100,000 files, they cannot run. So they are forced to clean their own space. So it's a kind of trick to not enforce the quota, but be sure that they are not overusing it. I don't know, I'm curious if someone else has another solution to that. So then just raise your hand and we can discuss, or offline, or I think this is a problem that many of us has. But the other issue we have is cleaning policy. It's based on Robinhood, obviously. Right now, it's the only policy engine that we see for Lustre. So thanks to CEA, we have this tool, and it works quite fine, but with the size of the system and the file system and the number of files, we have a problem with the Lustre version we have on Sonexion. So the change log is too slow in respect of the rate of the change of the file system. So it cannot keep the pace on updating the Robinhood database. And we were falling behind it. So we decided to stop the real-time check, and we simply do a 24-hour scan that is more than enough for now, and we run the policy based on that scan. And that's it. Because every time we were trying the real time, or we were crashing the Robinhood server, or simply was too late when the cleaning policy was running, so it was not acceptable. And we are looking forward to see if the next version of Lustre and Robinhood altogether can work better than this, because changelog is not the way to go for sure. Also here, if someone has experience to share, I'm really open. We are looking for a solution. For now, we are doing that, but it's not the final solution, that's clear. Then I wanted to put here an example of the problem we saw with Lustre, that this is on the small Lustre we have on the Meteo machine. So basically, the Meteo guys, they're using an application that is called FeedExtra that is behaving really weird with Lustre. And here I try to show, don't care about the numbers, it's just to see that when you run many times this application, you have a huge variation on the time to complete the same application with the same data, doing exactly the same thing. That goes from 3 minutes to 120 minutes. So the variation is really big. And after a long check, what we found is there is no problem on Lustre. The metadata is not overloaded. The OST is not overloaded. OSSs are not suffering. So it's something else. And what we found at the end is that it's something between the kernel, Linux kernel, and Lustre managing the cache of the client. So basically, the client was losing a lot of time just purging the cache. And I don't know if anyone is facing this problem, but the way we work around that is just cleaning the cache and regularly, and the problem went away. So in the meantime, we asked our users could you please just recheck your application and see if you are using just old code to manage the I/O and to allocate the memory or whatever. They did, and we got an improvement, but the problem is still there. It's only like postponed by a few hours of run. So still the way the cache is managed by the kernel and Lustre is not optimal. And to reach that conclusion, we were doing the test on all the file system we had, and especially the spectrum scale GPFS didn't have the problem. And it was clear that they managed completely different the cache. And so it's kind of kernel and Linux are competing for the same page or something that is introducing these delays. I don't know if you have any comment here. And I was wondering if in Lustre 2.9 this is fixed or not. I don't know if someone has any experience on that. Would be nice to know. Sorry? Try?
Should be fixed in 2.9.
Okay, 2.10. I have to convince Craig to go to 2.10, but that's my problem as users. When you don't manage really your version of Lustre, you have to convince the vendor to do it for you and move forward to the next version, and typically it takes a bit. So we will try. Then I wanted to share with you our next challenge, and it's just one slide. I don't know if any one of you has the use case coming on, using object storage. I saw this morning Intel pushing theirs. It's more or less object storage. So what people are asking us as users is they want to use the SPC facility, meaning POSIX, but then they want to share their files through object on the website. And they don't want to move the data. So they are looking for an interface between the POSIX world and the object world. We are looking into Swift, OpenStack. We have something working on the GPFS side, but we want something also on the Lustre side because we don't want them to move too much the file if they need it. We are talking to few peers in Europe, including CEA, for some European project. And I don't know if someone wants to share any experience on that or has any experience on that, if there is any clear plan on doing this kind. There is a project called Swift on File. I don't know if this is in the plan for Lustre or not. That would be great. because this will help a lot the HPC center, at least us. So that's what I have, and I'm open to discuss, question, whatever.
I'll just say, please talk to me later. I'd like to hear about your use cases for the object storage stuff. You mentioned grid FTP. I'm from Globus, and Globus has connectors that'll talk to, for example, S3, and we're also working on HTTPS access into file systems through the Globus Connect server. So you can get web access without having to go through SSH and grid FTP. So I don't know if we're the right solution, but I would certainly like to hear what you need and see if we can help, or
Sure.
maybe we can make some changes.
Yeah, would be a nice talk.
Anyone else?
Questions or comments?
Just a comment. I'm recently using a newer version of Robinhood. The version I'm using is the 3.0-0.RC1 with MySQL 5.6, and the performance with the changelog has improved significantly from previous 2. whatever Robinhood versions. And the thing that we experienced was that it needed to be the MySQL 5.6 and not the 5.5, because 5.5 just didn't mesh well. But anyway, so I don't know what versions you're using, but there have been improvements in the newer versions.
Which Lustre version do you have? Because also that makes a difference.
The Lustre version that we're testing on is a 2.5.
Okay, so because we are trying to install now the latest Robinhood, we are having issue between Robinhood version, MySQL version, Red Hat version, and OFED version. Every time we start, the node makes a suicide, more or less, without leaving any trace of any log or core, anything. So we have to roll back a bit, and we have to understand what's crashing the machine. But it's good to know that at the end it works better.
Yeah, we did have issues with a combination of a couple of those versions that would just use so many CPU cycles that the machine would just die, effectively becoming non-responsive. So the version matching did seem to make a difference for us.
So maybe I'll stop by and you tell me which version you have, so I can do the same metrics.
Oh, we have a question in the back. I've been waiting for one of these for so long.
Go, Rob, go.
So this is more a comment on the zone reclaim mode. What you're seeing is something I ran into as well. When I had it enabled, I ran into issues with my MDS and had to disable it. And the other thing I was going to mention, I don't know if you looked at this, have you checked the number of partitions that are being created on your MDS for the thread pools? I know the default behavior would create several of them, and we ended up just basically setting it to one to avoid doing that, and that seemed to help us somewhat too.
The problem there is still the same. When you use the vendor box, you cannot really check that part. You open a bug and you hope they do that check and fix it. But it's kind of standard configuration they do, and they cannot change, otherwise you are out of support and blah, blah, blah. So I can check. I didn't check. We can try. But I'm pretty sure if we find something, then we open a bug and it will take forever to get the change. Thank you. Welcome.